Hello, everybody. Welcome to your post-daily news show for Friday, March the 18th. I am John Pollock with the returning Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
Hey John, how you doing? Nice to be back with you.
It's always nice when you're back, and I just have to talk. It's wonderful.
Oh, likewise. Splitting this up is a lot better than having either of us do it completely on our own. So, nice to have that.
Yes, a big thank you to Rich Fan for joining me on Thursday. And you can also catch the Wellness Policy, which is up now, free on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed. And what was the coverage of this month? What topic?
We had the privilege of speaking to Jackson Stone, who is a professional wrestler on the independent scene and also somebody who runs a nonprofit to provide mental health work for professional wrestlers and other people in need called You Are Loved. So we had a really great, I think an hour plus chat just talking about what it's like to be a professional wrestler and what mental health issues wrestlers may face in the industry. So it was a great chat. So you can find it right here at youtube.com/postwrestling or at postwrestlingcafe.com for free.
Yes, and a heads up that we will be back tonight with Rewind a SmackDown, and we're going to have a special start time tonight. We are going to be going live right after the show at 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going earlier tonight because Rampage is not airing till at least 11:30, and based on how long the basketball game goes, it could go later. So no Rampage review tonight, but we will be live for SmackDown coverage.
Yeah, and just a note that we will be going live exclusively for Post Wrestling Cafe members for Rewind to SmackDown. We've been trying to do the simulcast thing with YouTube, and honestly, it's just there are way too many technical hurdles, and I imagine most people checking it out will probably check it out afterwards anyway. So we'll still put a clip up, at youtube.com/postwrestling for free, but for the most part, it'll be a show exclusively for Post Wrestling Cafe members.
All right, so 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. We will also have coverage on the site this weekend. John Cena is going to cover both nights of the NWA Crockett Cup. Eric Marcotte with the UFC show that is happening in London, England on Saturday afternoon. And Sunday, DDT has a big show at Sumo Hall, and Mark Buckledy will be doing a report on that show. Never a quiet weekend in professional wrestling or mixed martial arts.
Never, ever. People are always surprised, like when they're like, oh, so you do a show, Monday, and then for the pay-per-views.
Yeah, that's it. No, Monday, and then we just find things to do the other 6 days of the week. That's it. Yeah. But yes, I know, Wai, you do want to talk about Tom Aspinall and his big fight with Alexander Volkov, but we do have some other things to get to first. And we start off with Jeff Hardy, who was on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy show that is hosted by John Elba, friend of the site, and went into, towards the end of the show, spending some time discussing his WWE release that came in December after that house show in Edinburgh, Texas, where he was teaming with Xavier Woods and Drew McIntyre against the Bloodline. And then before the end of the match, went into the crowd, started taking selfies. And this is what led to the concern by WWE. A drug test was administered, and they wanted Jeff Hardy to go to rehab. And he confirmed all of this and stated that he was not on drugs or anything, and that if there was some kind of issue, he shouldn't have been out there. And said that it ended up, while he was not trying to get released, he did make that clear. He said that subconsciously, it turned out to be one of the smartest things he did because it led to his release. And it really, he says as much. Like, his plan was to go to AEW once his deal was up, and then he ended up being released days after that. And after the 90 days were up, there he was in AEW.
Yeah, certainly, I think still a little bizarre, I have to say. We were looking towards answers as to why he decided to walk out on that match, and the best answer he seemed to provide was just that it seemed to be a feeling within him. And I think if you're an employer, like, that's not good enough. And certainly, we can ask questions about whether or not WWE jumped the gun in, demanding that he go to rehab or anything like that. But they are, of course, within their rights to, I think, at least expect maybe a plausible reason why a man would decide to suddenly do that on the job. So I don't.
And what their concern would have been that wouldn't show up in a drug test. Like, I take him at face value that, and the fact he had a drug test, but there was obviously enough concern of WWE who, with this Hall of Fame offer, they did not want this guy going to AEW and went ahead and made that decision.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they it's I don't doubt the Hardys at some point will go into the WWE Hall of Fame, but at least, just judging by the interview, they seem to take it more as like, oh, we screwed up. Here's a make good Hall of Fame offer rather than something that felt genuine.
Which
And
I loved, like Jeff's, like you have Jeff and Matt here side by side, and Jeff saying, like, how would that have worked to go into the Hall of Fame? Because I was going to AEW. Could I be in AEW and go into the Hall of Fame? And Matt just says, I'm pretty sure they would have made sure you agreed to something that prevents you from going to AEW, which I think would have been 100% the case, and the reason why they were offering Jeff and not Matt the Hall of Fame offer instead of doing both going in, for instance.
Yeah, it's a safe assumption. Listen, in the end, it clearly worked out for him. It's working out for the audience as well. I mean, one thing that I think is true is the fact that, WWE was not going to put Jeff Hardy in a prime spot. He mentioned, what is it, Survivor Series? When Jeff had that, like, it was Final 2.
With Rollins, and got a huge reception. Like, that was like, and Hardy was not getting pushed at the time, but that audience was very much behind Jeff, and he talked about that being like a rare kind of high point of his recent time with the company.
Yeah, very much so. That everybody still wants to see a Jeff Hardy run, and I think they still very much want to see a Hardy Boys run as well. So, and AEW was probably the biggest place, the only place on a big stage they could do it.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of just said that, in AEW, he said multiple times he feels valued there, whereas in WWE, he felt they were keeping him around to make action figures, and that often he was just going up and down the halls wondering, why am I even here? Like, he acknowledges the fact, like, I'm good, but I'm still beat up, and I think he realizes, like, this is kind of my last, quote unquote run, and I think didn't want to be just, wasting that time in WWE when there was stuff to be doing elsewhere where it would be of more substantial stakes involved.
Yeah.
So you can catch the whole interview, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, with John Elba conducting the interview, and they've been doing a whole series of going through the Broken Matt character on that show. We move on over to Scott Hall, and I think we have talked about Scott Hall every single day this week, and this was, way of some of the biggest, wrestler passings of the last, 10, 12 years or so. Like, it was interesting just seeing in the Observer today, the comparison of like the Google searches for Scott Hall that are above your Warriors, your Randy Savages, your Roddy Pipers. And, part of that is that I think, like, I don't want to trivialize this to a term like a news cycle, but, we had kind of the preparation for this. Like Monday, it was this awful news that was coming out and people, fearing the worst and hoping for a miracle. And then there was, his actual passing that was reported on Monday night. But nonetheless, I think like this really shines a light on this performer that had multiple runs that you can associate in terms of, where you were in your childhood or teenage years, and a huge, huge part of the biggest boom of our lifetimes in the late 90s.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was a little surprising to me to see that stat as well. The fact that, his death, I mean, due to a number of the factors that you mentioned, the fact that it was maybe a bit more prolonged than, a sudden loss like some of the others. But I think for me, it's the one that hit me the hardest, given my age demographic and when I started watching professional wrestling. And I think, if we're talking about the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars eras, I think we have to understand that, like, a lot of those names are going to have a bit more, widespread impact than maybe even somebody like a Ultimate Warrior or a Macho Man Randy Savage, because that many more people were watching professional wrestling. Maybe more web savvy people because they're younger or would be curious because they grew up watching in those eras as well. But yeah, he was a big star.
Yeah, in the Observer, I definitely recommend people read the obit on him, and it shines quite a light on the past several years for Scott Hall, which were not kind to him. This is just an excerpt from the Observer. Sean Waltman noted that he had called Hall a month ago to come out to stay with him because Hall had been deteriorating over the past 2 years due to drinking. Waltman said the pandemic did him in. It was hard enough for him as it was, but he was isolated in his house with no social interaction. He was down to 210 pounds. They had called Dallas Page, and he went over. It was really bad. When Hall fell and broke his hip, which would have been just recently, that led to the surgery, he was unable to move and was laying on the ground, unable to get to the phone. He laid there for a few days before friends told Paige to check on him since they couldn't get in contact with him. Paige found him and got him to the hospital. While largely kept quiet, he was in bad shape the night before last year's WrestleMania for the NWO Hall of Fame induction as he passed out in the bar but no sold it the next night on stage. He was also in rough shape at an appearance late last year at the Stockton Comic-Con and of late had not been making bookings. And, I think this more so just reiterates like what substance abuse is, and this is a disease that you do not just come away from it cured. It is something that is always going to be with you. And I think like you can look at this with Scott Hall. This is something that he fought right up until the end. There were good points, there were highs, but there were also lows. And that's what comes with addiction and looking at it as a disease that this man suffered greatly from.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really sad to read about. It's really sad to hear because I think in our fan minds, we thought this story had a happy ending, and it's clear it wasn't a happy ending for several of those years. It's just a reminder that addiction is not something you cure. It's something that you constantly have to struggle with, and this man clearly did. So. I think it also is a reminder of not just the toll it took on him, but the toll it took on the people around him as well. People like a Diamond Dallas Page, people like a Scott Hall or a Sean Waltman, who I think by all accounts tried way more than I think, most people expect a friend to do for a guy like him. It's incredibly disappointing. And not to mention his family, of course.
Yeah. I mean, just the story of him being, stranded in his own home after that fall and Dallas Page coming to find him. I mean, it's a sad story in some ways, and it's one that's it's a very, very complex one with Scott Hall that, I mean, it's all out there for people to see. And I think you tend to just want to assume that things all turned out in the end to be a happy ending. That's not often how these kinds of stories end, and it's a constant struggle. But there's just been so much coverage on Scott Hall this year, and I'm very curious to see how much of a presence he kind of has over like WrestleMania weekend, where you're going to be seeing a lot of these names, and at the Hall of Fame, and different mentions from people and such like that as well.
I think you're going to see a lot of tribute spots. You're going to see a lot of toothpicks. You're going to see some razor's edges. You're going to see some. Whatever under the ladder walks, I'm sure.
So we've also got update on Kenny Omega. This also coming courtesy from the Observer newsletter that is out, and that he recently had arthroscopic knee surgery, which has an estimated recovery of 10 weeks. But Omega also has to go for surgery for the hernia that he's been dealing with for some time, and he had previously stated that he expected 8 weeks to recover from that. So. It would, and the report states there's no time frame for an AEW return. But I guess if we were looking at an optimistic return of Double or Nothing, that would seem to be pushing things. And I would say after finally taking this much needed time off for Kenny Omega, the last thing you want to do is rush back. This pay-per-view will be okay without Kenny Omega. And the last thing you want to do is just reverse any of this work that you have had done, and come back when the timing is right. Just get everything taken care of as much as you can do now.
I mean, he uses a dive named after this movie, but I mean, the man is very much like a Terminator, and we want to make sure the K-1000 is in tip-top shape by the time he returns.
Oh, I thought for sure you were going with you want to make sure that he'll be back.
That too, yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. We don't have this in the rundown. I do want to send our best wishes to Pat Kenny. PW Insider had an update that he recently suffered a mild stroke and is now dealing with impaired vision. And he's on his road to recovery, which, I mean, a mild stroke, that's, obviously very, very significant. So our thoughts are with Pat Kenny. We can.
Been a rough week in professional
Yes,
wrestling.
I know. These are not uplifting stories that we are going through.
Yeah. Also wanted to mention the death of JJ Maguire. Those of you who listened recently to our Rewind Away on that WCW Christmas Brawl show. Well, I mean, a lot of us don't really know the name, but you definitely know the man's work. He was writing partner of Jimmy Hart's for a number of classic professional wrestling theme songs, including Shawn Michaels' "Sexy Boy," Dusty Rhodes' "American Dream," the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase's theme, and recently learned that he passed away last week, about a week ago this month. Slam Wrestling has an article from one of his friends who wrote about
John
it.
Cosper, yeah, the author.
Okay, yes, and we recently put up that episode of Christmas Brawl, the review that Chris and Nate and I did as well, up here on YouTube for free, so you guys can go check that out, and rest in peace to a great musician.
Can you imagine Shawn Michaels getting the mileage out of that song?
No.
Throughout, like,
Any
the man,
wrestler. Yeah.
he moved on from the Heartbreak Kid, and yet that song has remained.
Incredible, absolutely. I mean, it's weird, especially when he walks out now bald-headed, like jeans,
And you don't think twice about it. It's like, of course he's out to this song.
Yeah.
Did you like the Sherry version?
I liked it, of course. Yeah,
I like the
it too.
Sherry version a lot. I know it may be a polarizing theme for some. I really like the Sherry version. When I first heard that, I thought it was awesome.
We're so much more used to the Sean version now, but I mean, if we heard the Sherry version just as much, I think we would have enjoyed it as much as well.
Just imagine giving him that lyric sheet and be like, "You're gonna sing this, Sean." Like, I'm what?
Fit the character. At the
It
time.
worked. It worked. We go to Wednesday night's numbers for AEW, the St. Patrick's Day Slam edition of Dynamite, doing 993,000 viewers, 0.38 in the 18 to 49 demo. They were behind the coverage of the NCAA tournament and the NBA, so they finished sixth for the night on cable. They were down 4% in the demo, but up 5% in viewership. And they were up in 50 plus. Last week they hit a very low figure of 0.33. This week up to a 0.38 in 50 plus. So that's going to make a difference in your overall viewership. They were also up 6% in 18 to 34. And Brandon Thurston has the quarters for this. And if you look at them, it was interesting. The high point for viewership was the opening 6-man tag. However, that was also the lowest for 18 to 49 for the night. And the highest in 18 to 49 was the Jericho Appreciation Society segment. So more so interesting that first quarter to see the high in viewership, but the low in 18 to 49 for that opener.
I haven't really dove into the metrics to see why that might be.
I want an answer. I want a clear-cut answer why all these people were tuned in, but the 18 to 49s were lagging up until they jumped a little in the second segment.
I'll tell you what. I mean, there was no Bachelor on Wednesday night, of course. We had a Monday and Tuesday finale, but nothing on the Wednesday, so that can't be a part of the reason. So I don't know, but hey,
can you give us a quick review of The Bachelor? The 4 hours. What did I miss?
Where do I begin, John? This was crazy.
I almost wanted to watch some of this, but I watched the trailer. I was like, I could never get through a whole episode of this. There's no way.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin, honestly, because like
he slept with 2 of the women, correct?
Okay, so the concept of The Bachelor is, there's one guy who's a bachelor. Everybody wants to date this person, and by the end of the season, you are expected to get a proposal. Every season of The Bachelor has had one of these successful proposals. So every single week you have your eliminations, and then he kind of whittles down his choices. There's this thing in The Bachelor called Fantasy Suites as you get down to the final 3. And what Fantasy Suites is, it's your one time to get private time with this person away from the cameras. So when it gets time to the final 3, you have to go to Fantasy Suites. And it's incredibly awkward because everybody by this point is in love with this guy, and he claims that he was in love with all 3 of them too. And you have to every contestant, quote unquote contestant, has to deal with the idea and the knowledge that, hey, the person that they're in love with is spending private time with this person. And when we say private time, I think we know exactly what that means and what's expected.
I mean, it could be a wide range of things.
They could be playing Monopoly. Yeah, they could be watching Dynamite. Sure. Could be.
You don't want the whole world to know you're watching Dynamite inside the house. Like maybe
True. What's a bigger fantasy than watching wrestling?
So he used to be Big Money Matt, but now his brother's coming, and he's going to get outvoted as part of the AHFO. And he doesn't realize the numbers are not with him because Private Party have a secret union with Andrade.
You didn't need to watch it all. I don't even need to. So anyway, so like he does fantasy suites with 2 women. The third woman that goes to fantasy suites with him asks him point blank, I can't be with somebody who has been intimate with 2 other people or is currently in love with 2 other people. And he explains, you never told me this. You told me to explore these relationships. And it was a big freak out, like they broke up right then and there. Ooh. And at that point, like, this guy, like he's kind of naive. His name's Clayton. By the way, I recognize we're still a wrestling podcast, but John asked and he just set me off. All right.
No,
so
I want to know more about Clayton.
So I mean, now at this point, according to interviews and whatnot, now he's suspicious that this person strictly just got onto this show for their career, because that happens a lot. People end up getting like social media followings, like people get chosen to be the Bachelorette. So like if you're eliminated typically towards the end, you might get chosen to be the next Bachelor or Bachelorette. So he became super suspicious. It became this big blow up fight and everybody had an opinion on it on social media. And then the next week he had to have the task of explaining to the remaining 2 contestants that not only was he not in a great mental state, but he was currently in love with all 3 of them, and he slept with the 2 of them as well. And as you would expect, it broke their hearts. We saw like tears just nonstop for like a solid hour. They were pretty.
This really defeats the purpose of the private suite. Like what happens in the private suite has to be shared.
It doesn't have to be, but I mean,
what about this man's privacy?
Well, he felt that transparency, according to him, 1,000% transparency was how he wanted to go about this, and he saw the end result. So they were broken up about it. One of them just wanted to leave right there, but this dude is like, you shouldn't leave. You should just stick around. And so we're supposed to get a decision by the end. By night 2, he makes his decision between the 2 of them. None of them. He wants the third one who left. The one who basically gave him the ultimatum and just the one who left the show. So everybody's broken up about it. Like we get this big kind of blow up where he has to break up now with the 2 women that he begged to stay, and they're just like, they gave him the best lashing on screen. That was just so much fun to watch. And then
so do we know what happened with this third woman?
So, so this dude decides to, I'm just laughing at this whole scenario of me explaining this on a wrestling podcast. So he decides to propose to the third woman.
Okay.
The one who left. Her name's Susie. And just a bit of a Hail Mary because by this point, everything was rough. The family got involved. Everybody's just hurt. And of course she says no, because why would you? I can't trust you. My rules are still there. And then so this is all presented to us in a live setting, right? And then the host is just like, oh, for the first time in Bachelor history, we had an engagement that didn't go through. Or did it? And
what?
Then so in the live setting, they reveal that in the off season, Susie had actually reached out to Clayton. And these 2, for the past 4 months, have actually been in a relationship, and they're madly in love, and he's about to move in with her. And then by the end, and then actually the kicker at the end of it all was that for the next season of The Bachelorette, the other 2 women are going to be now co-bachelorettes.
Oh my goodness!
So everybody
are you kidding me?
Everybody gets a happy ending, dude. It was
they weren't
crazy.
pissed. The other 2, they were okay with the.
Oh, they
result?
were very pissed. There was an interaction between Clayton with both of the women individually, and they did not have nice things to say, and justifiably so. It was I think just for a viewer, man, incredibly satisfying to see some of that. But somehow everybody got a happy ending, So anyway, this is a.
So the next season would be the double bachelorettes.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, you've 20% sold me on this next season.
I feel terrible about it. It is complete trashy reality.
Is it 2
TV.
hours every week?
Yeah.
Ooh, big commitment.
It's kind of difficult on Mondays, especially.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That we are now down to the final 8 in the New Japan Cup, and we are getting into the final decisions that will be made in that particular tournament, coming out of today's final second round matches, where Shingo Takagi expectedly defeated Chase Owens, and in what I would classify as a surprise, Hiromu Takahashi defeated Evil with Everything is Evil. He used his own finisher on him after overcoming Dick Togo and company. So we will get Shingo Takagi against Hiromu in the next round, in the round of 8. So that joins the previously announced quarterfinal matches. We got Kazuchika Okada against Shima and Tetsuya Naito against Jeff Cobb. That's happening on Sunday, and those two winners will face. And then on the other side of the bracket, it is Hiromu and Shingo Takagi and Zack Sabre Jr. against Will Ospreay. So I know that most people have not been following the New Japan Cup too closely, but this final 8 is pretty solid. I think like from now through the end of the tournament next weekend, this will be some great stuff, regardless of whatever combinations come out of the quarterfinals.
Yeah. Like as a somebody who has not been following, like I feel like this would be the time that I might decide to jump in, because I mean, any combination of these 4 is bound to be great. I love the fact that it's Hiromu that is actually, seemingly getting elevated into the mix of these heavyweight main eventers.
Give me the final 4. What do you think we get? So Okada and Shima. I think that's a fair assumption. We're getting Okada
Shima,
advancing.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think they go that far with Shima. Okay, Okada, and then it's got to be Shingo, right?
Shingo and Hiromu. I would lean Shingo. Yeah, I think Shingo, which either sets up Shingo with Ospreay or Shingo with Zack Sabre Jr. So, I mean, you cannot go wrong with either of those combinations. And then Okada advancing to take on Naito or Cobb. I see Cobb advancing. I see Cobb going right to the finals. I think Cobb beats Okada and goes to the finals. And you could either go with, Cobb winning outright and then he has a win over Okada, or Cobb loses and you set up 2 challengers for Okada, the winner of this tournament and Cobb at a future date. And so you get Cobb against wherever you go on this side. You could go Cobb and Shingo. You could go Cobb and Ospreay.
They're the same stable. Would they do that?
I mean, they're doing Shingo and Hiromu, so I don't think it necessarily... Ospreay and Cobb would be... I would say that would be a further chance of happening than like Cobb and... I see Cobb and Shingo being like a likely final, but they could go a few different directions here. It's a very interesting final 8 that they have.
Yeah.
And then tonight we shift our focus to SmackDown, which is happening from the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, that is built around a collision between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. So maybe both will be pulling up in their rental cars, and they're gonna have a fender bender.
I mean, did they have insurance? Did they get the full coverage?
Oh, maybe Brock didn't tick off the box at Hertz, and Reigns is going to take this to his insurance company. So this could add a wrinkle to WrestleMania.
So in the WWE.com preview lexicon, we have certain terms that we know are right to use. Reaction indicates that one person will be speaking. All right, essentially it's promo. Collide.
They're gonna touch.
Okay, there's physical contact involved. You can't mentally. You can't
maybe this
collide.
will be Brock leading to Roman bleeding at the end of this show after the Garden Angle.
It's a bit soon, don't you think? Save the blood for
more blood.
For the match.
More, lots of blood. I think we're gonna get plenty of blood between.
Maybe they'll just bump into each other in the hallway in the back.
Hey,
that's
you're in my way. See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That will constitute a collision. They have also announced several matches for the show. So we have got Naomi and Sasha Banks against Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. Drew McIntyre and the Viking Raiders against Happy Corbin, Madcap Moss, and Jinder Mahal. And this one's the best. Kofi Kingston versus Ridge Holland, where they are promoting that Sheamus and Butch will be lurking in the background.
Oh, I'd almost forgotten.
A Butch lurking is being advertised for tonight. I would think that should set up whatever the direction is for WrestleMania. We could probably get Xavier Woods coming back tonight. And if they need a third person, maybe that's the Ricochet spot because he's got nothing for Mania. And if they need a third person to replace Big E, Ricochet makes as much sense as anyone.
Ricochet as an honorary New Day member. Is he going to come out with like the Cheerios and all that?
Yeah.
He should.
Yeah, maybe he's got his ATV license. He can drive the ATV for them.
Okay. Yeah, if they decide to go ahead with the 6-man, yeah. Personally, it doesn't make much difference. I mean, to me, the appeal would be to see a reunited New Day as you
could go with that too. You could have Ridge and Sheamus and Butch lurking in the background at WrestleMania.
Does Butch have a last name?
No, it's just Butch.
He's not Butch Dunn?
Not yet. No, just Butch.
It's just starting.
We'll find if they anoint him with a name. And then whatever they do with Pat McAfee tonight, you have to continue that angle of whether he is on commentary, if Vince is going to have any involvement in this at the end of the day. Yeah, so they kind of teased that last week. I thought they would maybe do something on social media for it, but going into tonight, that's, I guess, another question for the show. And then Rampage, the late night edition of the show, features Keith Lee against Max Caster, Darby Allin and The Butcher, Red Velvet against Layla Hirsch, and the House of Black, Malachi Black, Brody King, and Buddy Matthews against Bear Country and Serpentico. That's your lineup.
Yeah, it feels like it's a 11:30 Rampage.
It does,
rather than a 10 o'clock Rampage. Which
we'll see if there's any benefit to following the basketball game, or if this is just going to be a Rampage that is going to kind of fall into the ether. I wouldn't say they have constructed a lineup that is pulling you to stay up late for the show. Like, it feels like fine wrestling show, but not must see.
You do get San Antonio though. That great crowd from San Antonio.
They were great. They were great on Wednesday. We'll see if that was extended into the final hour. All right.
Hey, we got some super chats here.
Oh, I hope we have some Bachelor questions.
I don't think we have any Bachelor questions, but
damn,
we do have something from. Let's start off here with Michael Thomas. I'm going to screw up your last name, so I'm not even going to try, okay? He says, cheers, with a €10 super chat.
I think that was his No Limit Soldiers request from you.
Oh, okay. Did my best. Thank you so much for the support, Michael. We go up next to Jake from the Windy City, who sends a $5 super chat. Thank you, Jake. Says, in the latest media landscape news, do you see the merger between Warner Media and Discovery Inc. having any significance for AEW, or not much at all?
I mean, it's a major merger of the company that is their broadcast partner, so I think you have to look at it. Will it have a trickle-down effect on AEW? That remains to be seen, but I think when you're looking at their television deals like that, it could be a big factor. It could be nothing at all. But it's something to watch regardless. It's too early to tell. AEW is a very, very small part of the larger merger here that is going down.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like, what it means in terms of their streaming bundling options. Like how much of a push they push.
Well, we know that they have said, like, long term. Well, at a date to be determined, like Discovery Plus and HBO Max will be put together, and once they are ready to put a revamped streaming platform out there, does AEW play a role in that? That is certainly something to watch in the short term.
Yeah. As far as any sort of impact goes, it's whether or not any sort of revamp has anything to do with sports package and whether or not AEW is a big part of that. So we shall see. Thank you, Jake. And of course, we go to Brandon from New Jersey with the $2 super chat, who says, more like Cobb 28. Am I right?
You're never right, Brandon, but thank you nonetheless.
Hey, before we get out of here, you had a chance to watch Casey Leiden's fighter series, right?
Yes. So Casey Leiden is fighting this weekend. We chatted about it earlier this week, and MMA Fighting has put out like a little preview special, pretty much of like Casey going into why he is doing this, and it's an exhibition fight. I think it's like 3 2-minute rounds. I understand that he's going to be doing, and I just find it like super incredible that he is doing this. It's like an amazing experience that he is undergoing.
Volkov too, like how difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to play the video. It didn't.
Oh, it's fine. But no, he's fighting this weekend, and if you want to check out this video, it's kind of him just discussing like his history of like covering it from like the perspective of a video journalist, and just feeling like he is around all of these fighters, but wanted to have a better understanding of what they are going through. And he's doing this. Like, he's 44 years old. Like, this is a really inspiring story, and it's like you've already won by going through all of this. Regardless of what happens in the fight, I just think it's an amazing experience to undergo from someone from his line of work.
Completely, yeah. Again, as a former videographer myself, I would never ever make this decision to go from doing one thing to another. Like, we sit at our desks all day long, and Casey clearly is not that type. So I'm so curious to see this video, and I'm hoping he does really well on Saturday. One last super chat before we get out of here. This comes to us from, of course, MJ from NJ with a $10 super chat, who says, something to look for. Massive Rampage rating. He wrote Rampage raging, but he means, I think he meant Rampage. Maybe he means raging, okay? Massive, we're going to get so angry. Massive Rampage raging increase due to every bar showing NCAAs, and then it comes on right after. I would have said Mox and Brian or the Hardys for the opening slot.
Yeah, I mean, bars are going to be showing NCAA. They might not be keeping it on that channel after the game's over. There's plenty of basketball to follow. Yeah, we'll see. It's like I would think for certain that first quarter is going to benefit greatly. Will that last throughout the show, or are people just going to tune out? Like, it's rather late. I don't look at this number as anything of significance, though. It's like it is what it is, whether it's helped or hurt by the late time slot versus the great lead-in that they have on Friday. But that is going to wrap things up for us. We're back tonight, 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time, exclusively for all members at postwrestlingcafe.com. Also, we have 2 more editions of Rewind Away coming up this month. We're going to be doing Supercard of Honor from 2017 next Tuesday, and the following week, going back to the July 2016 draft edition of SmackDown. So we're going to get in 2 Rewind Aways before WrestleMania weekend. So that is out there for Cafe members.
Almost forgot to mention, coming up this weekend, we have the latest edition of Postmarks coming out on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed. This one will be Bruce and David talking to the archivist, Brad. The archivist. That's his last name. That is all he will be known as here. Brad the Archivist, yeah. So do check that one out on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed. That is available for free as well at postwrestlingcafe.com.
That's it. Have a great weekend. We'll speak with you tonight.